Hello, welcome to another Behind the Seams. This quilt is a particular favorite of mine, and I'll tell you something about it in this little story that I'm going to recount to you. When I was a teenager, I went to visit my older sister. She was just married and starting a new life on a farm. We were sorting some things in a closet, and I came across some old quilt blocks. The backgrounds were bright yellow and vivid green, and when I looked closer, they were Dresden plates. When I asked where she got them, she thought our grandma made them, and she was given them after her passing. Well, sometime later, my sister asked if I wanted some of them, and I gladly accepted the green ones. Later, when I was looking more closely, the original quilt blocks were hand-sewn, and probably in the 1940s. The background fabric was rich emerald green, and each Dresden plate was pieced from scraps of fabric typical at that time. Not the fine quilting cotton we have today, but a mix of leftover dress prints and seersucker remnants, and household fabrics. During that post-war period, fabric was precious and often reused, and the textile industry was also experimenting with aniline dyes, synthetic colors first developed in the late 19th century, but still evolving through the 1940s and 1950s. Those dyes produced new, brighter shades, especially purples and pinks, but they often faded unevenly or bled over time. And the limited variety of hues and the bold contrasts gave those fabrics a distinctive look, one that feels both kind of practical and playful today. But I really loved the quirky, mismatched colors. The petals are made from a mix of cottons, typical of seersucker or dress fabrics, floral prints, plaids, geometric motifs in muted reds, blues, yellows, greens, and pinks. Cottons were widely used in the post-Depression era, and prints were cheerful and a variety designed for reuse. The solid centers, especially the turquoise blue and bright solid border colors, suggest later additions, and that's correct. I put those on, and I added those in the mid-1970s. The age of flower power and bohemian style and all those old-fashioned prints suddenly felt vibrant again. I decided to finish the quilt choosing the bright turquoise border to reflect my own spirit. A little touch of red and gray matched the inner circles of the flowers. The batting that was available was puffy polyester, so that's what I had to use. I hand-stitched much of the quilting and tied with green yarn in places to create, just to corral the polyester batting. But I also experimented with a little bit of machine stitching in places. The craftsmanship here is not very good. I would say my grandmother's hand-appliqued petals, they were very loosely stitched, unevenly stitched, and typically I would say she probably made them by lamplight sometime when she was sitting and waiting for things to happen on the farm where she lived. The tied yarn that I put in was my attempt to get this thing put together. And I like the fact that I used yarn and bright green and it held the layers together, and I added a little bit of machine stitching as well. And at that time in my life, I didn't know how to bind a quilt, so I just folded the edges of the quilt over and sewed them with my sewing machine. Well, after I finished university and moved to my first job in a rented house, it was an old century home. I had the back part of the house that was really quite cold. And if you remember, my cat's day of the week quilt was really worn out after I finished university, and I needed something warm and cheerful for my new space. And that turquoise and emerald green was just perfect, so bright and happy against the long, cold winter nights in Ontario. I was still single, I was working hard, and settling into my first real home, and the quilt brought really a lot of warmth and color to those really cold days. This quilt really is truly a quilt of its time, or rather, two times. My grandmother's thoughtful handiwork, joined with my 1970s sense of color and experimentation. The quilt reflects resourcefulness and creativity of quilters who often reused what they had at hand and with the skills that they had. This story is stitched across generations, changing fashions, changing fabrics, and the enduring art of making something beautiful from what we have. If this quilt could speak, I think it would remember all the hands, my grandmother's careful stitches and my own patient ones, and all the times it was folded, smoothed, and cared for over the years. It would remember the quiet of that first apartment, the hum of the winter furnace, the stillness of long evenings after work, and the soft light that came through the old windows on bright winter mornings. It would remember being a welcome bit of color and comfort in those early independent years. Through every move and every change, this quilt has always had a place. Never packed away, always valued. Its colors may have softened a little, but its spirit hasn't faded. If it could speak, I think it would say it's content, proud to have been part of my story, stitched with care and kept with love. My grandma's Dresden plates.